to the one in Oslo, and my wife would want to go to all these little Stav churches in Norway, and they have all these wonderful kind of Russian-like icons all over the place, and it's I just don't know what it is about the visual arts. I was just saying, you go in there and you're drinking something in, and I don't know what it is, and let me tell you something too. You're reading these black books, and it's do you guys? I don't know if you've been reading them, but they got like sometimes if you read a fairy tale before you go to sleep, Charles, you don't have any problem, and Gary, you had a dream.
I know.
Laid an egg. Good job.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, I had that same problem, but now I have this incubation couch where I just go lie on that. I have the most amazing dreams. And, last night I was just having these images of, I was just ready to go to bed. And I can imagine how scary a real vision is I kept seeing, like African masks in like a kaleidoscope,
Oh, wow.
and just these, and they were black and white, and it was a little scary, and because it seemed, I don't think it lasted more than 4 or 5 seconds, but or not, maybe 3 seconds, but it seemed like a long, long time. But anyway, the visual arts are, one thing I know Marie-Louise von Franz said that she really liked art from primitive sources like cave art or something like that, and that was what really appealed to her.
Very intuitive then.
Yes, versus a I think the Romanticists and the Impressionists, their art is just so beautiful. The Romanticists went back to some mythic themes, and they seem to be really informed by something, but I would study. I would go get a degree in art history. I would love it.
Yeah, I want to read the black books, but I have a pretty difficult time reading books in PDF for any long period of time, and then was really bummed out when I looked online to buy a physical copy, and only physical copies I could find were like $300.
Well, yeah, they've dropped to $217. So
it's not too much.
I'll send you mine all cut up. Don't say that too loud, but I cut all the pages out. You can have it really if you want to.
There's a Peter Kingsley book that I found the other day. After I had that dream.
Yeah,
and then you had mentioned.
Heard of
I didn't know. Well, I may have heard the name, but I didn't know who he was. But there's some book that I found the other day about like the Pythagorean tradition and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that.
If you listen to him, he's incredibly, he's very serious, but he's also, he seems like he's actually doing a seance whenever he's talking. He seems like he's in a trance, and one time when he lived in North Carolina for a while. Hi, Malika. Is that how you pronounce your name, Malika?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, perfectly fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, we're just kind of having the meeting before the meeting. We're going to start in about 3 minutes here, but Malika is from Istanbul, so I think it's about almost 6 o'clock there.
Yes, it's perfect time for me here.
Yes, great. Mm-hmm. Yes. Have you ever been to the Hagia Sophia?
No.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's
a shame, I
always
know.
wanted to go to anyway.
Yeah. Inshallah, one day you will.
Yes, I'll have to see if I can get there someday. But anyway, we're just sitting here talking about nothing. But we'll get started here just a couple minutes. But anyway, and Kevin here is from the Philippines, and Charles is from near where I live, and so is Gary. And then we'll have some other people probably coming in later. And hi, Kevin. Kevin was actually from Norway. He's half Norwegian. And that's how I knew it was 6 o'clock in Istanbul, because all my relatives live in Norway. And so I think it's 5 o'clock there. So I was guessing that it was possibly 6. Because I think Moscow is another hour later. I don't know. But anyway. Well, anyway, maybe we can get started unless anybody else has got any opening comments. Now, I wanted to say that, you know, there really isn't any other way to go through this other than just to go through it. And it's going to be slow. But I think if you go through it slowly, we're going to pick up nuggets and things, you know. And, you know, I always like to read some novels where the pace of it is so leisurely slow, you know. I mean, somebody takes like 30 pages to describe the interior of a room or something like that. You know, there's just something magical about it. But the other problem I think we're going to have with this book, remember that this is a journal, really. You know, I mean, these are nightly recordings that are of a very immediate nature, that aren't revised, that aren't edited, that are just coming out of him. And as his soul tells him, remember, this is not a book that you're writing for your own vanity. You know, you're writing this to me. So remember who you're talking to here, you know, which is, you know, almost gives me goosebumps. You know, I mean, it really is, because the nature of what we're reading right now is really incredible. But, you know, I sent out this letter. I think that one thing we should remember, too, is what prompted all of this, you know, was, I mean, here's kind of a calendar here of the timeline. See, now on October 27th of 1913, which was on a Monday, was when Jung sent the letter to Freud, you know, totally cutting off all relationships with him. He quit the international he was the president of the yearbook of the International Psychological Association, and he quit the International Psychological Association. So he pretty much cut himself off from all international prestige, because these very prestige-driven psychologists immediately pick sides, you know, and the only persons that picked sides with Jung were the ones that lived in Switzerland, you know, and all of the rest of the world went with Freud. So Jung had just pulled the rug out from under himself dramatically. And so he's somewhat reeling. He's still a young man. He's 38 years old. I mean, he got into this, you know, pretty much about 1902, and it's now 11 years later. And so in all this, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever quit your job or something like that. And you know, and then you didn't have any other job lined up. I mean, it's a little scary. And Jung...
I did that.
Yes. It's a little scary. So then Jung turns to, you know, just 2 weeks later, Jung starts with his first dialogue. And, you know, I thought we'd just, you know, just review those very quickly. You know, it's just so much here to unpack that I don't know how quickly we can go through this. But, you know, I think the thing is, if you go through it slowly, we'll pick up nuggets that you won't if we just race through, you know. So anyway, the first one was, you know, and I was a little hard on Jung on this because you got to remember he's coming here in extreme agony. And yet there's a certain peace in him. He's that one thing you must know, the one thing I have learned is that one must live this life. This life is the way to the unfathomable. And I don't think anybody can argue with that, you know, but you have to have a discerning, you have to, you know, be able to find, you know, what Jung says later in this book, and what Carrie Baines, who was, you know, one of his main confidants, I think he trusted her more than anybody other than her husband, Peter Baines, you know, was to be honest with him, you know, and what she told Jung is the one thing that, hi, Tim and Adam. Malika here's from Istanbul, and she's going to be with us. Anyway, that the one thing that Jung said in the Red Books that made it almost imperative that it be published was that the world is only half. It's empty without the image that's attached to it. So when Jung says that the only way to the unfathomable is through life, that's true if you can attach a symbol, the symbol of meaning with that lived life, you know. And we're going to find a lot of things in here that he's saying. Now remember, he's saying this in real time. It's not revised. He's writing it in extreme duress because he's reeling. He really is. He's reeling. And not only is he reeling because of his cutting himself off from Freud, but he's been having these visions of Switzerland surrounded in blood, you know, and I mean, actual real visions that one, he said, lasted for 2 hours on a trip to see his mother-in-law. And then, you know, Sonu says, well, it only really takes an hour to get there. So I'm not sure why it took him 2 hours. But I mean, and he's concerned, you know, because I was telling Gary, I just had this image for maybe 3 or 4 seconds of just these African masks, you know, and I was scared me, you know, I mean, you actually see them while you're awake. It's scary. So anyway, that's why he's coming to the Black Books. And so that this immediacy is what makes this absolutely just, you know, there is nothing like this. There is nothing like this you're going to find anywhere, you know. So, and we're going to start with I just want to show this to Adam and Tim, you know, this little calendar here. On the 27th of October is when Jung cut off all relationships with Freud. And then these first 3 dialogues of that from Wednesday through the weekend were the ones we went through last time. Okay. Hi, Jan. How are you doing? And so the one we're going to start with right now is 1 week later. It's on the 22nd of November. Okay. All right. And then, like I say, we're just going to go through these, and I guarantee you there's things in here that are revelations. I mean, just absolute revelations. And I don't think it's because of Jung. I think it's because of what he's doing, you know, which Lance Owens called the science of visioning. You know, I mean, he's actually, you read your own, if you do these journals, and if apparently this is Jung's active imagination. He does have visions, but what he does is just, he's writing to voices in a book, you know, and then having them answer. Some of these that become more story-like, you know, I think you find those with in Anna Marjula, she had some, and you know, the one in Adler had some, and Christiana Morgan had some. Actual stories occur that aren't dreams, and of course, dreams are always, you know, have a story to them, you know, and so the psyche loves stories. You know, they love some kind of that's their way of speaking things. I mean, especially, you know, usually images are static, but sometimes they're moving, and the drama is a statement as well. Okay, so anyway, this is that 1 week later. He's left it, you know, 3 days of extreme duress, and so he's coming back to it now. And he says, "It is night. I call on you. No answer. Where do I stand? Which doors will open?" He's asking. No, there's no answers, you know. And then he does hear an answer, and it says, "Look down into your depths," a voice says. But he's plagued by impatience. He says, "Not in vain have I been absent from you for 11 years. And then he says, and I guess she's not ready at my call. What pamperedness is in me?" You know, that there's some fear involved in this, to look down into his depths. And he says, "Am I afraid of the depths?" You know, in other words, the voice said, "Look down into your depths." Well, he's a thinking function person. So, you know, this is something, and remember what he's been doing in all his science life. There's been not much looking down into his depths. And he says, "It's not as if I feared the depths or I'm afraid of them." And then he hears another whisper, "Look into your depths." And then he feels as if he's sitting at the edge of a deep green well, and he's listening, and full of patience. And what does he need? He needs more solitude, more depth. That's what's needed. He's realizing that's what she's saying. Look into your depths. And he says, and then another voice, this is the third statement, it says, "Pray to your depths. Waken the dead." And so anyway, he says, "God, what do you want? I am not ready yet." You know, I mean, this is the fourth dialogue. I mean, he starts out saying, "Where do I stand? Which doors will open?" And the door says, "Look into your depths." He hesitates and gives some kind of reasons he can't, and then it says, "Look into your depths, pray to your depths, waken the dead." You know, so there's that's a kind of a very quiet dialogue, you know, but it's very powerful, you know. And so then after that, that we're going to go to the next dialogue, and let's kind of keep track of where we are here, because I think it's helpful. The reason I think this is helpful to kind of look at this is because we have to remember the immediacy of this stuff we're reading, that they're not necessarily interconnected. Okay, so then now we're going to go to the 26th of November here. Okay, and it's the 26th. Now this one was not included in the Red Book, and because not much happens in it, and yet Jung does what I do when not much happens in my active imagination. He just starts bringing up dreams, you know, older dreams, and he doesn't amplify them or discuss them much, but he, you know, at least it gives you something to do, you know, while you're doing the active imagination, if nothing is speaking. And he starts it out, in which underworld am I? It's dark and black as death. Okay, in other words, I don't know, if you do active imagination and you're sitting waiting for a vision, that's what you're seeing. Nothing. It's dark and black as death. And everything around him deceives him. You know, in other words, all these, he's still very resistant to this work. You know, he keeps hearing these voices mocking him for doing this. You know, I mean, this is not anything that is going to have an outcome. You know, is going to be productive with anything. You know, at this point, and he compares it to Christ being crucified and people mocking him as he's walking to the midpoint of a quaternity where the ego and the self unite at the midpoint of a four, you know, suspended at the midpoint. And on the way, what happens? Everyone's mocking him as he goes here. Well, who in us, as we're going to the midpoint of the quaternity, is mocking us? You know, it's all these voices saying, hey, let's watch TV, let's do this, let's do that. What are you wasting your time on this for? And you're going to find later, we're going to get a wonderful definition of what this work is, you know, where he distinguishes between myself and myself, you know, and he says, I've been too concerned with myself and not concerned enough with myself. And this myself is not what I'm thinking. It's the land in which the soul resides. You know, he values everything in myself, but nothing in myself. You know, I think that would probably be clear in another language, like English. I mean, German, maybe. It's just kind of hard to. So he's while he's writing, he does hear a voice. It says, "Don't let yourself be distracted from what you have to do." And then he says, "Well, what is it that I shall do?" And he says, "Tell you of more inner matters." And he says, maybe, and then he starts wondering if he needs to overcome her. I need to overcome this daemon of my inner world, this 100-headed dragon. And he must bid silence to all the voices that want to hinder him on the work, that block the way with painful mockery. You know, otherwise he can't cut through. And then here's some of the things that are saying. Is it really, is this really your firm will, my soul? Don't ask why. To what end is this? Is it useful? Is it valuable? And then he just hears a voice say, do it. You know, don't let yourself be distracted from what you have to do. And he says, so despite this tiresome toil of doubt, this mountain must be climbed. Despite the seeming worthlessness of the undertaken, he says that the quiet or any quiet proof of correctness or the value of his actions And the fact that his pen bristles from doing the work, he's going to persevere. So everything's working against him in his conscious attitude to doing this. You know, it's just, but and you can see the gaps. You know, this is a week later. He's coming back to this. And then he talks about the impotence of intellect, his own intellect. And the life beyond his intellects pushes him past this internal criticism, you know. And it's what drives him to talk to her is not his own pride or his he just said about to her because of his pain, because of his wound, you know, and he can't resist her, you know. And then he actually says must be having a hard night, because he says in parentheses, "Shut up, my disgust." So then he starts talking about a dream he has, a couple of them. I don't know really how relevant they are, but the one particularly about his cousin dying, we're going to skip that one. You know, I mean, he has a dream at the same time that his cousin dies, almost exactly the same time. The only thing that's interesting about that is when the cousin is crawling out of a pit, you know, she's wearing a white dress with black mystical figures on it. And you'll find later that Siegfried, when they kill Siegfried, you know, lay an ambush for him, he's wearing that same outfit. It's a white tunic with black mystical figures on it. So I don't know if those are connected, but at least it's something that I didn't hear any comments on it. I just wondered about it. So anyway, he had this dream. I'm going to keep an eye on the time here so that we don't get in trouble, because I want to, at kind of 10:30, turn it over for questions. But he has this dream about an Austrian customs guard, and he died 30 to 40 years ago, but has yet not managed to decompose, which surprises Jung. And then another striking figure comes, a knight of powerful build, clad in yellow armor, solid, inscrutable, and nothing impresses him. And on the black, he has a red Maltese cross. He has continued to exist from the 12th century, and at 12 to 1 daily takes the same route. And no one here marvels at these two apparitions, yet they really surprise Jung. Now, this Austrian customs guard, you know, Freud was from Vienna, Austria. He says is Freud, you know, and this dream was actually, you know, in June, a year earlier, almost a year earlier. So this is before he broke up with Freud. He's having dreams that Freud's been dead 30 to 40 years and doesn't know it, you know. I mean, he's wandering around, but looking intact because he doesn't know how to decompose, you know, but he's dead. So, and you know what Jung is really doing here, without anybody's help too. Remember, in all of these entries here, no one is helping him. He doesn't get any advice. He's just, and we will find out how incredibly adaptable he is, how he struggles through one or two sessions. The second session, he seems to have totally got the point, you know, and this is what Jeffrey Raft describes, that the way forward in active imagination is through relentless memory of what you've done previously. So what you did previously doesn't just fall away, you assimilate it, you know, and make it part of yourself. And then that's why I think he's a very quick learner and a quick starter, because it does not take him long to get into this big time, you know. So anyway, he ever since he was 15 years old, he's had a fascination with the Grail legend. And so he's associating this second night with himself, you know, like this great secret lies behind the Grail legends, and it seemed quite natural that he'd have this. Well, you know, 11 to 1200 A.D., you know, the year of the Minnesingers and all these Grail stories and these Grail legends were somewhat coincidental with the Crusades. You know, are a time of great flowering in European culture. You know, similar to what's going to be happening in 1913. And I don't know if you guys have. Joseph Campbell, you know, is really does a lot of on the Grail legends, and I particularly like Grail, the legends of Grail. You know, I think they're absolutely stunningly beautiful. You know, but anyway, so he had that dream and just talked about it, and then he talked about seeing the I remember he saw the girl or the dove that turned into a girl, and that went and played with his children, and then turned back into dove, and told Young that he can only come here when the male dove is busy with the 12 dead, you know, and so Young thought that this was. Young didn't just think, he was associating her with his soul. He sees her again, you know, and this was in August of 1913. He's sitting opposite an elderly lady, the wise old woman, and she's quickly grasping her analysis. So she's in tune with the depths. Suddenly there appears a child's hand. He turns around, and he sees this same little blonde girl. And he's just turns to her with, he says, ineffable delight. She kisses Young, and he awakens with tears of emotion. And he said this dream in August 1913, which was, you know, maybe 3 or 4 months earlier, provided him with great assurance. And then there is a dream about about peasants in the Middle Ages who were going to plunder a monastery, and they hid themselves in the shadows. And then the leader chickens out and leaves, and Young stays. You know, and then he's got 3 dreams about monasteries in a row here. Then his mother-in-law, Bertha Rochenbach, who's Emma Young's mother. And by the way, she was the first woman Young himself ever fell in love with. You know, she was 19 years older than Young. And one summer, she was watching Young for when he was, you know, maybe, I don't know, probably in his, not maybe a teenager yet, you know, and he just became infatuated with her, you know. And then later he marries her daughter, you know. But anyway, she had a book about this spread of Buddhism in England, and should Buddhist monasteries were spreading all over England and in a dangerous way. And there were pictures of these Buddhist monasteries, and they had rings of cannon around them, 2 of them. They're Buddhist monasteries in England, you know, and and they the book also had translations of in Sanskrit text, and his uncle and aunt, who were very hostile to culture, had already read it. And anyway, there's other into it, but we better keep going. There's and then he dreams about a monastery from a long time ago. Grass grew on its ruins. He's sitting there wondering about maybe the monks probably sat here too. And suddenly he's back in that period. And there's several levels, and the way that the monks communicated with each other were dropping red pellets into the other levels so that they know what each other were thinking. You know, if a red pellet dropped, then that meant something, you know. Anyway, those dreams, he doesn't really tell us what they mean, but they are there's an abbot who sits in the middle. He's lost in thoughts with disheveled hair, and he looked like Dionysus. And then there was a monk who sat with him who had a female's face, you know. And there were colorful groups of men with beautiful spiritual eyes. And then, you know, he had actually a fourth dream where he asks, he's in another monastery. No, he said 4 dreams about monasteries. And he asks this friend who was a chatterer, unstable and insignificant from college, if this was a men or a women's cloister. And he says, well, it's a women's cloister, of course. And Jung saying, no, it's a men's cloister, you know. Anyway, that was the 4 dreams. So anyway, there's not much comment. This was not in the Red Book, and it's not that moving or anything, but anyway. So now we're going to November 28th. I think that's just that's just 2 days earlier from November, or later from November 26th. Okay, he approaches the book with inner resistance. He endlessly devalues it, yet something forces him to dive into it. Actually, now here's where, you know, they said Jung came up with this, the name the self, because he thought the word God had too many connotations. Okay. And also he liked the term as it was used in Hinduism when it referred to the Brahman, you know, which is the divine without form, you know, the void. Okay. You know, and brr, it's supposed to be onomatopoeia. Brr is the sound of the energy of the universe, you know. So it's supposed to be that's the sound that the universe makes when it's without form, you know. And but actually, it appears from this that it came from the distinction between myself and this other self in me, the one that is where the soul resides. So there's no talk here about that he doesn't like the term God, and he doesn't like, and he likes the term Hinduism, but from Hinduism. But it's that place where the soul resides, which is also his self, but not the outer myself. You know, he has a picture, just by the way, of his soul, the place where the soul resides. You know, there she is. She's veiled, and she's accompanied by the moon, and she's accompanied by a halo. And Jung says we all have halos. You know, we are all, every person you meet, you only see a little part of them. They only see a little part of themselves too. We're surrounded by auras of which we're unaware. And that's really is these images that need to be associated with the events that occur, the people and the events that occur in our life that we just let drop through our fingers like water. We need to catch them, and we need to unite them with the event, you know. And at that point, you know, we are in union with the inner world, you know. Like Jung says too, that in your world, I am like a shadow, you know, blowing across, or some kind of piece of paper blowing across and Barbara Hanna said that was what the soul told her. In your world, I'm like a paper blowing across the lawn. So we don't have substance in their world, and they don't have substance in our world. And so what they really need in this inner, the place where the soul resides, self, is clarity. They need the medium of expression. They need us to take their images and to form them in art and color or something in the outer world, to do something to have the wordless depiction of the symbol, and then to provide words to it as well. That's the two things that these images ask of us. And as we do that, we're watering the desert of our soul. Here's a picture of Jung watering the desert of his soul. Now, how does he do it? What is the water that he's providing? The water he's providing is the medium of expression. If you take a dream and you draw it and color it in the outer world, you'll never be the same again after you do that. And the dream will respond to that. So and it's wordless. And it's an act of imagination. You just take a dream and you draw it and you color it. That's a very powerful dialogue with the inner world. Plus, now you've concretized it in the outer world. And you've also engaged in the transformation. You've moved the center of the gravity of awareness closer to the middle plane. So you're closer to the middle plane after you do that than you were before. So he's watering. And if you see where the plants are growing is from this unconscious, unformed unconscious down here, which is represented by a dragon. This is before ego has its dialogue with this monster. Once he has the dialogue with the monster, it transforms too. And then these flowers come up, and look who's in each flower. It's a Kabiri. Now the Kabiri are the dwarves, the dwarves of the created spirits. A dwarf. Even in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they're usually forgers or something, but they're creating things. They're creating substance. And yet they are the gods of the underworld. Okay, but they're not devils. They're the gods of the underworld. Well, this devilish aspect came from a world that doesn't like, from a doctrine that does not like the body, and wanted to spiritualize everything, and so anything to do with earth or the body is evil, But anyway, so that was quite a digression there. He approaches the book with inner resistance, endlessly devaluating it, yet something forces him to dive into it, actually into myself. Why? The soul seems to want to go this way, and it's very strange. The soul leads me into a desert. Now, this is called the desert in the Red Book, but you're not sure whether the desert is Jung and his conscious attitude, or the desert is the soul, which hasn't been watered yet and gardened or tended, and it's maybe the soul leads me into the desert of my own self. Okay, now his own self is dry, arid, and there's no landmarks. It's just sand. There's no He's not going anywhere. He's wandering in an aimless sea with no objectives. You know, and he mentions that too. When you're walking through the desert, it's totally disoriented. There's no way of knowing. There's no goal, and of course, we don't need a goal, really. Young finds out later. I don't quote me on that. I probably got that a little bit wrong. But anyway, he didn't think his soul was a desert, but it appears to be the case. It's a barren, hot desert, dusty and without water. And the journey into it just leads through hot sand. He's slowly waiting without a visible goal to hope for. But it seems to be necessary this way. Okay? And what do you think about that? You know, that slowly waiting without a visible goal to hope for it seems to be the way, you know. Well, that's a little hard to understand right now, but it's kind of Wu Wei Taoism, you know, or sort of a Zen attitude. And Jung says too later, just beautifully, it's absolutely beautiful, that there are no huge highways that are going anywhere. What we really should be interested in are some wayside roads, you know, that are nearby. So what psyche and soul need to be focused on is the immediacy of the wayside roads, not these big, long, you know, straight road interstate highways that take you all the way from Washington, D.C. to Sacramento, California. You know, I mean, these are, you should be more interested in these wayside roads. So he said in the past he would have revolted against such thoughts, but since he knows, his soul knows better, he's going to continue to follow her. But there's a hot wasteland, very eerie, and it seems to Jung the way leads so far from mankind, and he doesn't dare to ask, where is this going? It would be useless anyway, and why look ahead? You know, I mean, he could not recognize it anyway if he saw it, you know, where to, you know, I mean, so he's only seen, let's see, I didn't really get this, but he's only seen the sad and ugly and the beautiful came to him. Why should I lament over this? He makes his way step by step, not knowing how long his journey will last. So he says he finally is thinking that he says, why is myself a desert? The thought has never occurred to me before. And he says, it must have been that I'd lived too much in myself and in men and events. It almost seems to be the case. Why then did I avoid myself? And that's the land where the soul resides. It was too much involved in men and events and not enough involved in the land where the soul resides. And he says, was that not dear to me? What deception. And so Jung had avoided the land where the soul resides, the place of his soul, where she dwelled and lived. And he had not returned to this place except while dreaming. So now he's getting an idea of what the goal is, okay? What's the goal? It's the land where the soul resides, you know? So his thoughts were, you know, starting to go, you know, did you see how Jung just pulls this together so much? Now, remember, this is all real time. It's not theoretical. So, so this unwatered, untended by ego's attention desert, Jung's journey goes there, and it seems to lead him away from men and events into solitude with his self, the land where the soul resides. So is it solitude to be there? You know, solitude is true only when the self is a desert, an anchorite in his own desert, a hermit in his own desert. And so now he's asking, should I make a garden out of this desert? Should I people this desolate land? Should I make this desolate land inhabitable? All the habitable lands are already flooded by men and stormed by the uproar of life. So it seems that Jung is seeing what they would call the prima materia, or the negredo, and what he needs to do is to make a garden here, and that means to lend his attention to the place where the soul resides. And so that's why there's no big highways, no big goals or anything. You just need to tend your garden where the soul resides. Okay. Let's see. I'm just maybe see if there's anything else here. And then we'll just open it up for questions. And, when he finally asked the devil, I think he already got his answer, but I mean, he asked the soul what he's supposed to do here. He's just wandering through the sand, and she says, wait. And he doesn't like to hear that word. He's going to learn later what wait means, but reality is waiting. And he, let's see whether, I'm just trying to see if there's anything more important for the rest of this. Not really. Well, anyway, why don't we spend the last 15 minutes here just discussing anything. I mean, as I say, it's a little slow going through these things because there's so much here, but I just hate to miss anything. So anybody got any comments or anything? Or
I was just going to say, trying this active imagination and going through, a lot of frustration, a lot of emptiness and stuff. This is just the perfect material to be going through at this point, because you're like, yeah, I'm having difficulties too. But, I really liked what you said about, like when you're just not getting anything, going back to a dream. But what's really important in the dream is to have painted it. I thought, oh my gosh, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that.
Well, it's really is an active imagination, and I think what we're going to find here, and I really wish we had like about 5 hours and 7 days a week to go through this, but that I was prepared for all that. I don't. It takes a long time to go through this, to read it over and over again and try to get the sense of it, because otherwise, if you just read it, you kind of gloss over it. But the idea, I think, is he's in a desert. There's no place. There's no orientation anywhere. There doesn't seem to be any goal, and it's telling him, right, there is no goal. But look at the sand around here. Is that you? This is what you look like. Maybe the goal is to water and tend this desert and make it habitable, and not a place for only night creatures and tarantulas and lizards. Let's make it this habitable for yourself by watering and tending it. Go ahead, Tim. Did you?
Jan is asking, what does it mean to make a garden in the desert?
Okay. Well, I mean, I would say, I don't know if you saw this picture earlier, Jan, but wait.
Is that just illuminating the contents of the unconscious?
Yeah.
Making it come alive?
Yeah, right here. So yeah, now Jung is watering his desert here. Okay, so how do you water your desert? You know, you need to, instead of being interested in myself, you're supposed to be interested in the self. And instead of valuing myself, you're supposed to value the self, you know, and through being valuing more the contents of the place where the soul resides. And that would be the dreams. That would be through the dialogues like Jung's doing in these books. We're lending what this world lacks is the light of clarity of ego consciousness. Now it's there, and this is what Jung asks it. What have you been doing all this time? This awareness within him that he's ignored for 38 years. What have you been doing all this time? I mean, I asked that to my soul, and she was absolutely enraged. What have you been doing all this time? So, I mean, does anybody have any comments on the fact, or any, let's say, inclination?
It seems to me that maybe the first thing is intention, awareness and intention. The second thing is attention. And the third thing is taking it seriously enough to address it in some expressive way. And I sort of vacillate between thinking about it as a individual experience and a collective experience. I'm a human being at some really deep level, and being present to that humanness on the face of the earth in this time is a different thing than just going about having my life and entertaining myself. It seems like that takes a real effort, and I wonder if we're talking about the same thing here.
Well, I mean, that could be I would say the one thing that we have, first of all, that could be a medium of expression. Look at Mother Teresa. I mean, what did she give? What was her service? It was to other beings. But just to put it in Jungian terms, and this is not to say anything other than trying to recognize what Jung is saying here, and not saying it's right or wrong, but what it is he's saying here is, there's a center of awareness within him that he has ignored all of his life. So he's in deep trouble right now. Okay, he's in deep trouble because he's cut himself off from all his prestige that he built up through his academic career and everything, and he's in free fall. So he's looking for a place of solace. Okay, and he's finding it here. So this, what do you think of that? Now, what we're talking here about is someone who is in agony and in free fall personally, okay, and is trying to find some moorings and trying to find the still place where the Buddha sat, okay? They're trying to find the Bodhi tree, just an anchor in a world that's not samsara, okay? Now, does anybody feel in need of having one foot in a universe that's not the whirlwind? You can live in. He's saying he'd given too much of his attention to men and events. Okay, there's another awareness in him. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, can't stop thinking about, you know, it seems like, you know, this is the point that makes me think, or this is like a point of Jung's life that makes me think of like Parsifal, like, and he has to just let go of the reins, and like he wants to get somewhere, but in order to do so, he has to kind of stop trying. He has to let go of the reins. And then it also makes me think of Moses wandering through the desert. You know, he wants to get to the place. He wants to get to Jerusalem. He wants to get to the Holy Land of the Self. But he of course has to wander through the desert first. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't you have this polarizing contrast? Just like the opposites, just like in everything else.
But and it's the Sinai Desert is what, a couple 100 miles across, and he spent 40 years there. But Tim, I think one thing you're talking about is what should be your ultimate concern. You know, I mean, that was the way Paul Tillich put it. You know, that what is your ground of being? What's your reason for being here? What is your ultimate concern? Now, everybody has that as their sort of their root or their rhizome, and nobody can argue with it. I mean, if that's one person, if your mother, say Mother Teresa, and you know that that's your service, the one you were born for, you know, I mean, what that's I don't say that. I would say just in Jung's case, he's knowing that right now what he lacks is solitude. What he's in lack of is and he finally, I think this is a vision of what the unconscious thinks of the richness of his life. What does the unconscious think of the richness of our lives? Okay, you know, and how balanced they are. Are we a tree with leaves only on one side? You know, and what does our soul think, you know, of us?
Excuse me. May I share something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning. Yeah. For a few months, I had this strange experience that I even met with professionals. Wherever I was sitting or lying down, I was feeling like I'm falling and falling and falling. And also during the night when I have not fallen asleep, it was just feeling like the ground under me is just going down and down and down. It created a lot of fear during all the waking hours when this was happening. When I was standing or walking, I didn't have that feeling. Sitting, depending on how engaged my mind is with whatever I'm doing, I didn't feel it. But the moment of quietness when I arrived, or if I would lie down to sleep, or even just lie down, then I'm just feeling that there is a free fall started. And I've done bungee jumping, and I know what free fall is. Exactly the same feeling, like the navel area is just being pulled down in a falling way. So I said that I regularly do like contemplations and meditation. One day I said that I have to sit down and I have to do some meditation on this, because it was more than 2 or 3 months it was happening. It was very tiring, very scary. And I knew that it's just a feeling, nothing is happening. So in this meditation contemplation, first I imagined myself, then the universe and the earth beneath me and the sun. And I started saying that, okay, even if earth becomes just a space and I start falling through, and even if sun doesn't have a solidity and I'm just falling through everything in the universe, what is the fear that I carry in the fall? It's the fear of that hitting that ground to get hurt. But when I started imagining an infinite universe, I knew that the free fall might continue the rest of my life, but there is no like a plank, a bed, a sheet of metal or like wood on which I will like hit myself. The fear that I have from that horror that I will reach that lowest point in the universe actually is an illusion. And as I was reaching these thoughts, a heaviness started like evaporating from my shoulders. And after that, I didn't feel the free fall ever. Now, I don't know if it was called rationalization, active imagination, it was self-psychotherapy, what it was. But I had to actually accept that, okay, this will go on until I'm alive. And I also had to think what the like components of the sphere is. In past, my body has fallen, and the fall has the fear of that hitting that final thing that you hit and that hurts your body. And I knew that even in the world of meaning, that no one has come up upon saying that in the world of meaning, if a person falls this far, then he's at his lowest. I said, that has not been discovered. Maybe there is another human being, me or someone else, who can go lower than the one previous. So there's actually no like bottom where I can actually reach that feeling.
That would be spirit. You know, if there's no place to land, you're kind of like a puer aeternus. You're involved, you're in spirit, and there's no earth. You know, the lowest point in the universe would be the place where the temple of wisdom is. You know, so you know, it's the rock on which your temple of wisdom would be built. You know, so that would be. So all of this is very archetypal. There's nothing about it necessarily that's, I mean, the only thing is that you could do, I mean, let's just say, you know, is what Jung would do in this is he would sit down and have a dialogue with, I'm in free fall. Is there a bottom? You know, and he would go through that. I think we're getting a little bit close to turning over to Gary and Adam.
Okay, look, that's all I wanted. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I have not done the dialogue, which is the missing part, but it really helped me after that, like my life, whole life. But it's also an American thing. I would not share with someone who, before I only shared with a professional. Like I couldn't share with my family.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, anyway, we'll start next time where we left off, and I'm going to turn it over to Gary and Adam. So.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So actually, talking it over with Gary a little bit, I was thinking, and it seemed like Gary thought maybe it was also a good idea. So going forward with this is just actually to talk. So, you know, because we have such a long sort of expository section, rather than just go into like an exercise, maybe just to open up the rest of the meeting to sharing, maybe even continuing the dialogue that we're having.
Well, yeah, go right ahead.
That does give me a chance to actually expand on something Tim was talking about, and you were responding to a sort of idea of like purpose. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's really much of a point to me mentioning this because it's a problem that can't be solved within this short time period, but just, I don't know what someone's supposed to do when you feel like you have multiple entities, like kind of fighting for my purpose. Like I have all these different things inside of me that like they want me to, you know, they kind of want to be in the driver's seat. Like they want to determine my purpose. And I'm like, you know, I want to ask, you know, well, which one of you has the most clout? Which one of you is the boss around here? Which one of you, you know, made purpose itself? Yeah, I struggle with that like a lot. Like I have a really dysfunctional group of entities that want me to do all different types of things with my life. And I'm very envious of people that are like, well, I'm just going to be that, and that's because I like that, and I'm just going to go forward with that. And that's just, you know, what they end up doing. But yeah, I just wanted to this gave me a chance to throw that in there. So thank you.
Hopefully at some point, again, I mean, it is just, see, Jung had a purpose, a real strong purpose, but he's, you know what Joseph Campbell said, he got to the top of the ladder and found out it was against the wrong wall, you know? So that's a issue too. But the ultimate concern of everyone, maybe everyone could just tell us, what do you think about that, Adam? Is what is everyone's ultimate concern? What do they think is the part of them that seems to have the most unconscious urge to do something?
Yeah, we could talk about that. I think it looked like maybe Kevin was also about.
It's fine. It's fine. I can talk about it later.
Oh, okay. And by the way, Marina, hi. We're just having conversation instead of actually directed exercise for the remainder of the meeting. So, yeah.
I've been thinking about this question a lot. What is my ultimate concern? And it seems like the gift that I can share that is perhaps the most propitious at this particular time is trying to imagine a culture and a civilization that is not suicidal. So what would that look like? Because the culture that spreads across the world that was kind of invented by the West, the capitalist acquisitive culture, is just going to wipe out nature. And if we keep going in the same direction, we are all doomed. And so what kind of a civilization can we create that allows the human species to live within nature, within the limits of constraints imposed by nature? And so it would have to be a very, very different kind of civilization, not one that just simply grinds nature into money, but one that is really about human flourishing. And so I've been putting a lot of thought into what does that kind of a culture look like? What is it that really drives human flourishing? It doesn't seem to be anything about money. Money is about creating a future that appears to be derived from fear. You know, we don't want to be left behind. We don't want to be poor. We don't want to be ignored. And it's a fearful creature that says, okay, I'm going to build up my storehouse. And of course, God comes along and says, oh, too bad for you. You know, your time is up today. You know, that's a pretty dismal kind of existence. And yet that's the way we are all encouraged to live by what I think of as the educational system, which is the prominence of advertising. You know, the advertisers make you feel that you're just a hair's breadth away from happiness, and all you need is this one product because you're not sufficient by yourself. And I think the worst customer is a happy person. You know, what is it that gives the human being a real sense of fulfillment? And I think it has to do with relationships. It has to do with being engaged in something meaningful and carrying out the prospect of building the cathedral that is the human story. of which we are all contributors in a very tiny part. And the result is something we will never see, but it still gives meaning to our lives. And I think about all the millions of soldiers who have sacrificed their lives for some greater purpose. There is a greater purpose, but maybe not necessarily a nationalistic one, or, you know, fighting for some unspoken ideal that we all imagine. That ideal lives in our hearts, and if we can learn to unfold that dream, each of us in whatever way we can, I think we're moving forward.
I get that. That was pretty beautiful, honestly. And now I'm forgetting what I was going to say. But one thing I was going to say is, you know, okay, no, I remember. I think it just made me think of, you know, what type of world would I like to see, knowing that, you know, I want to see a healthy world that, yeah, isn't going to destroy itself. Like, I want to be able to, you know, have a neighbor that can openly say that they're, you know, they're a sage or an oracle instead of some tax lawyer or something, and it wouldn't be too strange. You know, no one would think anything of it, because, you know, what's wrong with that? And another thing that the reading of the Black Book was making me think of, that that it's almost like this outer world was actually its true inhabitants are actually the inner figures, and the inner world, its true inhabitants are actually us. But the main view of most people is that all there is the outer world, and that's the end of it. And I think you know, the meaning comes from the inner, and if it's completely ignored and just desolate, and not, if we can't even acknowledge it, if we can't have at least 51% of people, so at least the majority of people, to have a relationship and to understand and cherish the inner world, and, you know, just to have some sort of acknowledgement of, like, just like the autonomy and the nature of the psyche in the inner world, we're never going to get to where we're not going to destroy ourselves. It has to be the majority. And, you know, to understand that it's a real living thing. Like, it's alive, like it suffers tremendously, probably more than we do, because it's eternal. It's suffering will just go on and on and on and on. But eventually we, you know, just leave this plane, and we don't have to deal with our suffering. Our suffering is very temporal.
It mentions its suffering, and its suffering is from being ignored. You know, Jungian's psychology is a pretty lonely voice. There are not a lot of Jungians, and it is, and like Jung said, that he was glad he wasn't a Jungian himself, you know. But what he means is, what he's really rediscovering, is how Peter Kingsley said all of Western culture came about, is doing what Jung is doing in this Black Book. What Peter Kingsley says is what Western culture came from doing Black Books, from lying down in dark places and studying the science of visioning, which sort of petered out when directed thinking started. when symbolic thinking became devalued, and this, and I just want to mention one thing, is I always hear these talks about the people coming to the Earth in flying saucers and stuff. And I'm just kind of wondering to myself, first of all, almost the physical impossibility of a unless you're going through some kind of a black hole, some warp that you can go from instantly, be from here, a billion light years away, and in one instant be over here. That's about the only way that it could ever happen. Is why would the most advanced civilization in the universe necessarily be interested only in directed thinking and in technology? Perhaps they would be more interested in the three other functions of sensation, feeling, and intuition, of being a whole being, and in symbolic thinking, of being the geniuses of connecting with the inner world, and they say, yeah, but you could build a flying saucer. Why would we want to do that? Are we going to, what are we going to find out there that we can't find out sitting here in the ashes in the burning ground with Shiva? What am I going to find in outer space I can't find in the burning ground with Shiva? It's just a question, about what someone's ultimate concern is. I mean, anyway. Adam, what are you studying? Could you tell us what your goals are in studying? You've got almost a vision of what you want to do. And you've never really fleshed it out.
It's an interesting question, and it kind of goes back to a lot of what all of us are talking about. And maybe to answer it, I can talk about some other stuff too. But what we're talking about with this free fall, and what Jung apparently was experiencing, and what it kind of sounds to me like what Tim and Charles were talking about is almost like, in a way, neither of them exactly said this, but I sort of feel like our whole civilization is going through a free fall right now. I mean, with the pandemic, but just in general, I feel like it's a crisis that we're experiencing, a crisis of meaning, really. I know that I particularly am experiencing that. Again, not to get too personal, but having had this like waking up experience last year, and then I certainly feel like I'm in a process of free fall. And even interesting what Idris was saying about physically feeling that, Personally, I have not found a way to navigate that completely, but this degree program that I'm in at Pacifica, again, it's a MA PhD in depth psychology with a specialization in community, liberation, indigenous, and eco-psychologies. What am I hoping to accomplish with that? There's a very big conflict in me between needing to be able to eat and actually doing what I feel is meaningful. And I don't know where this degree program is going to lead. It's very frightening in that regard, but the stuff that we're studying seems like really important and directly related to what we're talking about here. So just to give you an example, last night I was reading a book written by a couple of my professors called Towards a Psychology of Liberation. So there's a kind of psychology called liberation psychology that was developed in Latin America, you know, I think during the time of dictatorships, which was, I mean, if we think what we're going through in the United States is bad, those of us who are in the United States, I mean, it's been a lot worse in a lot of places, you know, with the dictatorships that they had, like Brazil, Argentina, and other places in this world. Maybe Idris is familiar with some of this stuff. But basically the book talks about an experience. They're coming from depth psychology, which is not necessarily just Jungian, but an experience of rupture. So an individual or a society can experience rupture, which is where everything that, you know, sort of the fossilized like values, the normalization that we're living in, just shatters, you know. It's just maybe because of what we're talking about, like psyche just ruptures through. It has its own agenda. So, and you can't control it, right? So what happens after you've had rupture? And there are various things that a person or a society can do, which can be to try to shut that down, to try to go back to how it was before, to call oneself crazy, you know, and to basically try to get back to a state of normalcy and not let the new thing come out. But there are alternatives. Alternatives include creating communities where you can have a relational processing of this stuff and be able to express the meaning that you're experiencing or perceiving. And that can result in like letting the new thing actually develop, you know, because that's like the creative thing coming through. So, you know, how is that done? How do we relate what we're doing here to like being able to eat, you know, earning a living, things like that. You know, I don't see the way to put those things together at this point. And not to dominate here too much, but, you know, in sort of just almost not being willing to find a job myself at this point, which is actually part of the process from what I read last night. It's like, after you've had an experience like that, you sort of need to, or it's observed that people tend to need to draw back, you know, and process this stuff and not just go back to the way that it was before. So one of the things that I've been starting to do is volunteer at a nursery to ground myself, work with plants, work with the earth. And I'm volunteering for a place that ceded some land to an indigenous community, and the indigenous peoples around here. And they're using that land as, you know, well, I can't really get into it that much, but, you know, I'm just helping out there because I think it's really important, like Tim said, for like there to be a place for a way of relating that's embodied, that's connected to the earth. And I think indigenous cultures very much embodied that. So I'm just like helping to like do physical stuff with the land, you know, there. Where's that going to go? I don't know. It's extremely scary because, yeah, the money's going to run out at some point. How far can you go, you know, in this direction? So that's really wide open and, you know, no answers here. But since you asked, Craig, since I've been wanting to speak too, that's my contribution at the moment.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Adam. Those are beautiful, and it was resonating with my feelings and past experience and future hopes. And I was not that clear. You have done just further clarity. Pacifica Institute is very expensive. I contacted them. They said 30,000 for masters, 50,000 for PhD, and you have to be here physically in the same place and I'm in Canada. So I said, at least this year I cannot come. So it's good that you're there and you might be able to generously share. Even tidbit will be of big preciousness for us. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, it's actually, yeah, it's more expensive than that. I'm having to take out huge loans, but it's supposed to be 3 days per month that you actually go onto campus. Right now it's online. So just FYI in that.
You know, on the positive side, Adam, I don't know of anybody that I've ever met that would do a better job at whatever it is you want to end up doing than you. I mean, you're just, there's a part of you that is, that needs to be in service to the world, because you've got the gift. I mean, it's an amazing gift that you have. There's the little you displayed. And I'd say the same thing of Charles, by the way, and Kevin. You know, Charles has a wonderful ability to think symbolically or whatever, but Adam has this ability of empathy, which I don't know, I've never encountered before. Gary too, but I don't know what Gary, what is your, why don't you just tell us, what is it, your core work right now? What do you do that is the core work?
I think you muted yourself, Gary.
Oh.
I thought I'd unmuted.
Yeah.
Well, you know, so I'm going to call, so I retired, and, you know, so I'm calling this my, my second half of life, if you will. But, you know, I've been in this other young group for about 4 years. So, you know, my interest in it has just been kind of growing and growing. And, you know, it seems like the, you know, really the goal is increasing levels of consciousness. And, but the strange thing is that you really can't get to it through like religion, I don't think. And then I guess, you know, the other strange thing about it is that it seems like the first thing that we really have to do is, you know, we have to work on ourselves so that we don't end up with, like, you know, all of our interior projections, you know, flavoring everything we see. So, you know, I like the idea, like, of, you know, working on dialoguing with the various parts of myself. I thought it was interesting that Charles mentioned, like, well, I've got all these pieces of myself, all that want control, you know? And I thought, yeah, I kind of go through that at times too, because it's like, hey, you know, it's like, you know, you really, even though I'm retired, you only have so much time. And so you work with these blocks of time and you're like, well, what's really important, you know? And yet, you know, I guess my answer to Charles is that, well, you know, the ego, in the end, the ego, you know, really does, that really is the discerning function. So you really can kind of, you know, let the dialogues happen and then, you know, work out the compromises. But, you know, I think, like Kevin has mentioned in the past too, you know, I think dreams are probably the cleanest way to the unconscious, and, you know, some of the best ways to actually take direction. And, you know, like Craig, you know, I guess I'm, you know, I'm working with the active imagination, and I'm, you know, really bad at it. You know, it's like, it's just such a struggle. And I'm really liking the Black Book, because it's like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't just a struggle for me, you know, this is a struggle for, you know, I think for everyone. And I guess, you know, my advice would be, like, you know, while we're watching Jung's agonies with all of this, you know, now in the Black Book, now would be the time to try, because you can, you know, you can feel a lot of empathy for, you know, what he's going through, and, you know, the suffering that's occurring there. But yeah, mostly I'm like, well, you know, what is the form of behavior that I can take to, you know, raise consciousness, you know? And I've really been spending a lot of time in nature lately too, you know, just trying to ground myself. You know, I find that, that you know, and like, you know, what we just discussed, what was in the book, it was like, if you try to find the path too much with intention, you know, it's going to escape you. So it all seems very very mystical. So I guess that's my comment, you know, like, how do you increase consciousness, you know? And from what I've seen, Jung seems to be the most interesting path, but it all starts with working on yourself.
With, you know, with tending your garden, with, and what he says his work is going to be to make the desert of his own soul habitable. That's his goal and his purpose, you know, and so that's what he's going to be working on. And you'll see too, he becomes pretty focused on it. And like Marie-Louise von Franz said too, that, you know, he's like someone who's growing grapes, and they cut off all the other vines, and so that all the sap only runs to the one group of grapes. Maybe the other people, Marina or Kevin or Kendall, would you like to just, what would you say your core spiritual work is? Maybe Marina, what do you do, you think, on a weekly, daily basis that sort of describes your what your sacred hours or whatever?
Okay. Well, it's such a big question, isn't it? It's such a big question. So I try to just be present in the moment all the time. It's not always good, but even when it's not good, it's still being aware of what's going on, like what was said earlier about working on yourself. And I've been working on myself for a long time. And so I'm very aware of how insignificant I am in the bigger picture, and also about how significant I am at the same time. You'll know that I'm training at the moment, and I'm with the Society of Analytical Psychology in London. And I was amazed to find that Adler was a founder with Fordham, and I hadn't appreciated that. It was like stumbling on a family secret.
Gerhard Adler?
Yeah. It's quite sort of exciting in one way, but he fell out with Fordham, as you know, and Fordham kind of moved on with the work with that organisation. Adler moved on elsewhere. But these are like distant uncles in terms of belonging to an organisation and your connection with them. But nevertheless, it was exciting. And oh dear, it's really, I do find it difficult to just kind of go for it, really. But at the moment, you know, I'm training, and so a lot of my work is with other people, helping them bring up and bring out and birth their symbolic language, because, you know, everybody does have it. It's just that it's not conscious with them. So if they bring me vignettes of what's been going on in their lives, I try to engage with that symbolically and then try to reflect it back. And similarly, you know, I'm still in analysis myself, and it's really hard work, because sometimes even there, it's you know, we're at the dry hole. And I think of you, Craig, and I think, oh, where is the God of dry holes? I need him now, or her now. So it's working with others, it's working with myself, it's being immersed in nature, and just admiring leaves, and just the, you know, at the moment with the fall, the leaves are rotting, they're changing colours, and they're kind of retreating. And in retreating, the colours, the green and the brown, a new pattern is emerging. So even when there's, even, you know, and also the trees, if you watch when the leaves have fallen off, the bud is ready for next year. How amazing is that? And I feel very grounded as an individual, because going back to my own parents, they just had a small, they were subsistence farmers in Italy, in the south of Italy, and they lived off the land. I'm only once removed from a peasant and twice removed from a serf. So I'm carrying that. There's so much really around.
How often do you do your analysis?
Twice a week at the moment.
Twice a week? Yeah. Do you do any dream work in your analysis?
Yes, yeah, I do dream work. Not in the same way that that you do in the group, which I find really nourishing, because it's very much the birthing of the self is a birthing of the self, and that's slow and confusing and hard work, but also quite freeing as well, because nobody's directing my thinking. It's holding my thinking, and my thinking is forming in its own way, but very slowly. So in terms of, like, you know, spiritual work and birthing the self, for many years I was a midwife, and I think that was birthing the other. But therapy is birthing the self.
Yeah, my wife started it with a psychologist who is also training at the Chicago Young Institute. So she had to sign some kind of waiver that she would allow him to use some of what he learned through analyzing her in his homework, you know, and which was fine with her, you know, but she's kind of like she's been doing analysis with Jungian analysts for 5 or 6 years, but she very rarely does dream work, too much, and she doesn't take it very seriously. So she gives me her dreams, and I kind of analyze them, and you know, they're just beautiful dreams. I mean, she had one about she's at a wedding, and she's looking for a white purse with diamonds on it, but all she finds is her own black purse, you know, and so she has to go home with her ordinary blue leather wallet and her black purse. So there was no beaded, this beautiful beaded white purse. So that must mean she's not the bride at the wedding, you know. And I'm saying, you know,
it could be alchemical, and there's the Negreda.
Yes, it's unbelievable, beautiful dream, and she just gone. They all just say to get whole. They all say the same thing. I just think that's funny. Kevin, what's your modus operandi right now?
For me, it's I'm how do you say this? I'm forcing the God image, because you know, God cannot escape. You know, whatever he does, he cannot escape. And we know this by dream work or by shadow work. You know, if you go into your darkest space, and if you can shine the light of consciousness there, God is there. Like there is so much evidence of it. So I'm forcing God to reveal himself. Yeah, I guess. But this time in a waking state, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, well, what you know, what Jung would say you're trying to do. Mm. I'm just going to give you a little. This is not what Jung would be saying that you're trying to do. Is you're trying to find the place where the soul lives, where she resides and lives. That's where you know, and that's you know, I just think that last, I mean, we've got some unbelievable dialogues we're going to go through here next. I mean, the next one is going to be about the next dream will be the one about him seeing the wounded hero, the black scarab, the underground sun with all the little snakes coming up to it, you know, and you're going to find a much different account of that than you're going to find in the Red Book. This one is absolutely not worked over or anything, you know. This is here is a picture of it. I don't know if you can see it very well. But, okay, that's the scarab, which is a sun sign, and then there's the underground sun that's underwater. You can barely see it, and all the serpents go through there. And then the wounded hero, which is really is Jung's superior function, which is thinking. So I think he's going to be an INTP. I think he's going to be just like you, Kevin. It's going to be an INTP.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I personally think he's an INTP, but there's a Jungian circles. Some says, a lot of people says he's an INTP, and a lot of people say he's an INFJ, and a lot of people say he's an
well, he says
INTP.
himself he's an INTP in here.
Yeah,
unless
I know,
he changes his mind later.
In an interview, he says the same thing. He diagnosed himself as an INTP in an interview, like.
But anyway, that's his thinking function there that is going to be, and then we'll also go through. Now, all of these, the reason that the black books are so valuable is that they are going to give us these stories you heard in the Red Book. Like Jung calls this one in the Red Book a vision, but here twice in the black books he says it's a dream, you know, and it's the one of Siegfried riding down the mountain in his chariot of dead human bones. Now it doesn't show, but he had a white tunic with black mystical figures on it, and Jung and his instinctive aspect shoot Siegfried, and then his instinct goes and kills him, you know, gives him, and then go ahead.
Yeah, I never seen this image before, but now I mean, what a split. I mean, you know, in Jungian analysis, like they always talk about the split in dreams and so on. And here in the left image, you have the nature, and on the right, you have totally like blue, you know, either spiritual or cold. And this is the split in Jung. And it's a necessary split to have the consciousness Jung had. He had to split himself so much. And so I just find it interesting in this, during this big split, the entering of Siegfried comes. I'm sorry, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and also the fact that he's a thinking person explains why Salome is blind. You know, his feeling function is blind. You know, his eros has no vision because it's so unconscious. You know, and so that's going to be coming up. But I think also there's just some, like Gary was saying, if we read these, you know, in the same way that we do as we look at the calendar when he wrote them, you know, it's going to be I just want to stress that these really happened. And he wrote them down like you would write them down. Let's say you had just one of the worst days of your life and you can't go to church. No, you don't have anybody to turn to. So you open up a book and you just gush, spill it out. Well, this is what Jung's doing here, you know, and this is why this is such a treasure, you know, if we keep that in mind, that we're not reading someone's philosophical treatise that he had taken to the editor and went over 5 times, you know, it's this is real time, and his soul tells him, remember, you're not writing this book, you know, to pad your resume or to make yourself look, pad your vanity. You're writing this to me. Focus on me. And she teaches him, you know, why are there no orientations in the desert? Because look around you. You need to bring the orientation here by tending this garden. Right now it's totally uninhabitable, and it's totally uninhabitable because you spend all your time over here in the conscious world and you have never watered or tended this side of yourself. You're a tree with leaves only growing on the right side, not on the left. But anyway, we'll start next time with the one about the and it really is worth reading. It is the one about the that picture we saw, the scarab and everything, because you're going to find it is very, does not resemble what we read in the Red Book, and I like it too. So because of that. But anyway, I think unless anybody has some final words of wisdom.
Yeah, I just wanted to sing a bit of praise for this group, and also wish I could go back in time and thank Von Franz for doing everything that she did, because if I didn't discover her, then I probably wouldn't have ever gotten to this group. But you know, you're talking about asking people what their modus operandi is and kind of, you know, what their kind of core work is right now. And after, when Kevin was explaining his, I was like, oh yeah, I remember now what mine currently is. That one dream where I got the Mercury on me and had the feminine alien face in the mirror. I was doing garden work. That's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I mean, like just physical work, just sweat and slaving away. Honestly, that's my modus operandi right now. I'm working one of the most brutal jobs I've ever had right now, and I honestly want to give up and quit this job so bad, but I know I can't, and I know that it's exactly what I need to be doing. My discriminating kind of rational function or whatever is kind of pointed in a weird direction to where, like, instead of discriminating and rationalizing against, you know, the inner world and the psyche and things that the average person would be like, well, you know, why are you drawing pictures of your dreams and stuff? That shouldn't you be out working and stuff? You know, I kind of have mine in the opposite direction, and I'm like, why should I be scrubbing pots and pans for people all day? Isn't there something more significant that I'm supposed to be doing? But yeah, no, apparently this is right now. This is my purpose, unfortunately.
Well, hopefully someday you get discovered, because you, I'll tell you, the psyche thinks a lot of you. I mean, all of your dreams tell me that it loves you very much and thinks a lot of you.
Yeah, I think on occasion I certainly feel that. And when you mentioned the Jungian Institute of Chicago, I had a dream where I'll not name him, but a prominent clinical psychologist, I asked him, should I go to the Jungian Institute of Chicago? And he's like, yeah, I mean, it's more complicated than that, but yes, you should. I just thought that was interesting.
Well, yeah, I do. I think that too. I think you need to, I mean, if you could, you know, I'm hoping maybe some billionaire will
right. Well,
set you and Adam up. And
yeah, I'll start buying lottery tickets for us, Adam.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Well, anyway, we'll start next time with just, if you don't mind, we'll just go through this slowly. There's no reason to be in a big rush.
It's not gonna erode your like chance of success with the billionaire or with the lottery. Just keep me in mind.
Yes, we will. I was going to mention you too. I was just looking to see if you were still here. Yes, we'll make sure the billionaire doesn't forget you. Okay.
Great thing.
Okay.
And for now, you're the one. You're supporting everyone. So thank you from my heart.
Okay, great. Well, next time we'll go through the. I'm saying if we go through these. In fact, I kind of feel rushed anyway because there's so much. I mean, let's take it kind of slow, you know. And I think we'll learn a lot more that way. You know, there's no reason to be in a big rush. I've kind of felt in a big rush because this is such a big, long book. But, I mean, let's just take it slow. And I think we're going to learn a lot more that way, too. So, anyway, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Okay, bye, Tim and Charles and Gary and Kevin, Marina, Idris, and everybody.
Good luck with all your hopes and desires and plans.
Yes.
Everybody, whoever is busy with whatever and whatever they hope.
Yeah, and Kendall and Dawn, I'm sorry I didn't get to you this time. Okay, bye now.